Ready? Today is one of the saddest and most damaging days in the history of New York City and the New York City Police Department, where a New York City police officer who was sent out by request from the community through our chief of department's office to go out and enforce the law. A person stood and said, "Not today, I'm not going." A police officer has no other choice but to enforce that law. We can't just walk away. It's not called de-escalation. It's called doing your job. Now, this is a tragedy, and make no mistake, that family has lived with this tragedy for 5 years. Also has the police officers that have to deal with this. But the decision that was passed down today, saying that this police officer was reckless, is ludicrous. New York City police officers now will be considered reckless every time they put their hands on someone. That's what our job is. That's what you expect when you dial 911 when there's a criminal attacking you. How do we do our jobs if we can't stop and say, "Sir, you can't do that," and they refuse? I stand here today to tell every New York City police officer, and they're on patrol right now, when someone calls 911 and dispatchers call you, and there's a circumstance where you have to put your hands on someone, call your sergeant first, call emergency service second, because you will not have the backing of the city. You will not have the backing of the department. How do we know that? We had a mayor who predetermined the outcome. We know that because he said it on the national stage. He said the family will get justice. Of course, that family's justice is finding a police officer guilty and firing them. So how can you say they will get justice if you don't know what the response is going to be? So today he stood in front of all of you and lied like he's done before. So our police officers, unfortunately, are in a position of having to protect themselves rather than spending the time protecting you. Again, call your sergeant to the scene. Wait for emergency service when someone says, "I won't go," because they've taken your power away. This is a circumstance where this police officer went out to do a job he was instructed to do, where the community called and complained. Chief of Department Banks' office sent them out there, and a tragedy occurred. This police department should have reevaluated why we're going out enforcing those laws, not reevaluate what the police officers and the circumstance the department put them in. If there's going to be justice here for this city, Police Commissioner O'Neill needs to make the right decision and allow this police officer to go on with his career. We had a grand jury know that there was no crime. We had the feds say there was no crime. And now we have politics saying that there was. The judge advocate of the New York City Police Department needs to pull this back and reevaluate because she did not understand the law. To say a police officer effectively doing their job is reckless will freeze this police department. Over the last number of years since this mayor walked into City Hall, I've stood at this podium and said his decisions will have a chilling effect on New York City police officers. Well, the criminal advocates have gotten what they want. The police department is frozen. The police department can't stop the killers. They can't stop the criminals. They can't effectively do their job. This judge advocate said that where he violated is when he was bringing Mr. Garner to the ground when he was resisting arrest, and that he should have reevaluated. He should have reevaluated in 7 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. While a person is struggling, while you're in a fight, while you're almost going through a plate glass window, the responsibility of the police officer is to protect himself and protect the person we're trying to arrest. These are terrible circumstances for that family. It's terrible circumstances for the police officers that were involved. It's a horrible decision that came out today by someone that doesn't understand the law, but unfortunately understands politics. To say that we had a fair process when we listen to the drumbeat of the criminal advocates who have been chanting every time anyone on the other side tries to get the truth out, that is not justice. For the mayor to say we've had justice, but I don't know what the outcome is, shows he's lying. He has lost the confidence of New York City police officers. We always hoped that he'd come to his senses and understand the job that we do. Because he comes to our funerals and he says he's so sorry. When you all ask him a question, he says, I support the police officers. When it became decision time, he chose to throw that down the sewer. Now he's brought the police department to the gutter. I'm sorry to say that we have to tell our police officers, take it a step slower. Make sure we're thinking. Make sure you're making decisions in 7 seconds. Because you won't get backing. We're calling on Police Commissioner O'Neill today to save the New York City Police Department. Allow us to be effective again. Make sure this police officer goes out on patrol and does his job like he was hired to do, because he's done nothing wrong. Let's not worry about what the criminal advocates will say tomorrow. That's not bringing justice. Sometimes justice is standing up for what's right, even when everyone else says that you're wrong. Have the courage to do what's right. Don't listen to the mobs. Don't listen to the editorials. You need to listen to the facts. We all sat through that trial room testimony, the first time that we were allowed to tell our story as police officers, and we watched it calmly, the video, each step of the way, second by second. And what we saw was a police officer in a terrible situation that effectively did their job, and unfortunately, a tragedy visited our doorsteps. A tragedy visited the doorsteps of the Garner family. But to make it worse, we now have a frozen police department. I'm going to turn it over to Stuart London, who's our Pantaleo's attorney, and we'll open up to any questions.
Just invoking a limited waiver of 50A to talk about the decision briefly without getting into too many details. The case was won in that courtroom. What we cannot control is what happens outside that courtroom and the influences put on the judge and the medical examiner in that case. That case was won in the courtroom. The medical examiner we called indicated that that alleged chokehold had nothing to do with him passing away at all. His compromised cardiovascular system, his compromised respiratory system is why he passed away, by resisting arrest. The decision indicates he resisted arrest. The decision indicates that Officer Pantaleo's initial moves were correct, properly taught by NYPD. We called not only a medical examiner, but his instructor at the academy. The decision rests on, as Pat said, 7 seconds. They were about to go crashing through a plate glass window, and officers have had that issue before, and both of them could have died with shards of glass penetrating their bodies. But no, Officer Pantaleo, being a smart officer, pulled him away from the window to gain control of him. He didn't use a chokehold. He was merely attempting to gain control of him. When he was on the ground for approximately 3 to 4 seconds, he immediately got up, repositioned himself, put Mr. Garner on his side, and he was cuffed. You have to understand the standard for whether the actions were reasonable or not would be a gross deviation from a reasonable police officer in that situation. Officer Pantaleo had seconds to react. The courts have always said it's impossible to second guess the actions of police officers who are involved in a fluid situation. Even Inspector D, who testified at the trial, said when you're in a compromising situation, the one thing you should do is immediately get out of that position. And that's what Officer Pantaleo did. So Officer Pantaleo, not only did he do nothing wrong, but he acted the way he was taught to act. As Patty said, if you call this reckless assault, then almost any arrest on the street would be reckless assault. It's too bad this police commissioner was trying to figure out what the city needed or what the mayor wanted or what the police commissioner wanted. Had she ruled on the evidence presented in the four corners of that courtroom and not the public pressure outside that courtroom, which we all understand was tremendous, there would have been a different verdict.
What I don't think is understood many times is that 3, 4, 5 times a tour for New York City police officers, we're sometimes in this position where we have to put our hands on someone, where someone resists arrest. This is not just a fluke that just happened that day in Staten Island. This happens a number of times during the tour. So now you call 911. What do you expect us to do? I hope you expect us to do our job, but we expect backing, which we've found out today you will not have. You will not have it from a number of layers of government because the loudest people in the room are going to make them go a different direction. They're going to worry about, and the mayor's going to worry about, how does this look if I run for mayor? Well, it looks terrible because you've lost your police department, now you're losing the city, and we won't be able to effectively do our job. That's how it looks, Mr. Mayor. Questions?
Stu, what was Officer Pantaleo's reaction? How did he learn about it today? Can you characterize his demeanor?
Sure. I picked up the decision today at 10:30. I spoke to him on the phone. He was obviously disappointed, but wanted Pat to be out here to let other officers know the danger they're now in based on this decision. He wants to fight going forward. We will do that. We are cautiously optimistic. The police commissioner does not want to lose the officers in the city, as Patty stated, and will come to Officer Pantaleo's defense. But he was initially obviously not happy with the decision, disappointed, but he's a strong individual, and he understands the process. He understands that the state did not go forward, the feds did not go forward. He understands that this was going to be the toughest road because of politics. And politics trump, unfortunately, the rule of law. And that's what's hard for him to understand, because he knows, as anyone who was in that courtroom, that that case was won in the four corners of that room.
Mr. Lynch, I've never seen you this angry. What's the next move?
The next move here is the warning to our police officers. You have to protect yourself so we can protect the public. Realize that if you put your hands on someone, they resist arrest, and a tragedy occurs, that you lose your livelihood. You won't be able to go home at the end of the day. You're going to lose your benefits you fought so hard for. You know, the work that you do, like we all do each day, just to put food on the table. So don't believe when they say, when they give you that story in the academy, let's get out there and do it for the Gipper, because they're not going to back you. The Gipper's not going to be there. The mayor's not going to be there. Is the police commissioner going to be there? We'll find out. If he's looked at the facts of this case, and I know he got reports from the trial room, and many of you heard it, the facts speak to a police officer that was sent out there to do his job, and a tragedy occurred, but he still did it properly. We had this judge say it wasn't a chokehold. Didn't find them guilty on strangulation. Found them guilty on recklessness because the community called and we responded and someone resisted. That's reckless? That's asinine. That's not reckless. That's our job. That's what you hire us for. To do that job. When you're in trouble, you call the police and we respond. If someone says, well, I'm not going, do you want us just to walk away? I think you may be getting that, unfortunately, because that's the message from City Hall. How dare the mayor said it was a clean process. How dare the mayor said, I didn't give my opinion. I didn't talk to anyone. You don't have to talk to anyone. You're talking to the cameras. You talked to the nation the other day, and you said justice will be served for that family. You sent your message to the judge advocate. Unfortunately, she didn't understand the law, and you can see that in the writing of this decision. She didn't understand what it was going to do to the police department. So now it's up to the commissioner to save this department. Save this department so we can do our jobs, the jobs we want to do. We want to go out there and do it, but we need to have the backing. We can't listen to protesters. We're the ones that protect their right to protest. We might not understand them sometimes. We may not agree with them, but we'll protect them. They can't be listening to those loud voices that storm a room and disrupt. That's what happened here. You had criminal advocates get into the head of the leaders of our city. The mayor counted the votes. Can I leave this job I hate so much and become the president of the United States? And to make sure that happens, I'm going to send that message out to the judge advocate. This is what I expect. I expect you to find this police officer guilty. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Yes, sir.
Why do you think it's responsible to suggest the idea that because of this decision, police are going to walk away when 911 is called?
I'm not suggesting that idea. I am telling you, I know what I said, and what I'm saying to you is that police officers feel like they don't have the backing. Today proved it. So you call, what I said is when they call 911, respond to that call. When someone says they're not going, call your sergeant. Call emergency service. Don't put yourself at risk of death, of injury, of losing your job. That's what I said. And we can like it or not. The police department is frozen. How do we know the message of anti-police message is resonating? People are dumping buckets of water on the heads of police officers. Now, you cannot tell me anybody believes that's a good thing. Even the perps on the street went, whoa. They were in shock. We were in shock. The mayor said he was in shock, but there's no passion in what he says, so we know he doesn't believe it. Saying you should respect police officers, but then disrespecting them on the other hand, sends the message, you know what, on the street? Do what you like. You know what the mayor needs to listen to? The average person that's cramming into the subway, trying to get to work, and respects police officers. The message from City Hall is of disrespect. The message we get on the street from the public is thank you for what you do. I'm sorry that happened to you. This is a terrible situation. It's unfortunately this judge advocate and the mayor will listen to the wrong voices. We're hoping that the police commissioner listens to the right voice.
Mr. Lynch and Mr. Stewart, gentlemen, is the decision final, or is there more process that can be played out?
It's a draft decision. So myself, our law firm, as well as CCRB, has till the 14th of August to submit our discrepancies of the decision, why we think it's inaccurate, why we think she applied the law wrongly, why an objective police officer in Pantaleo's position would have done exactly what he did. And from that point on, the police commissioner makes a decision getting both our responses as well as the draft decision. So technically, according to the process, O'Neill has not even seen the decision right now.
Stu, based on your conversation today with Officer Pantaleo, do you suspect that he'll go the full route, meaning if O'Neill does dismiss him, he'll file suit, or is it possible he might resign before that?
No, at this point, we are going full steam ahead. He's done nothing wrong. He's committed no misconduct. There's no reason for him to do anything other than protect all his rights.
Pat, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Did you sense a change in the mayor's rhetoric when he announced he was running for president, or have you always been displeased with how he has talked about the situation?
It's gotten worse and worse since the day he got here. And we've had discussions in the past. We had discussions in 2014 that his rhetoric was making the street uneasy and police officers were going to get injured, and we got 2 police officers killed. So we lost faith a long time ago. But we always hoped that he'd make the right decision based on the facts. But you know you should watch his Pinocchio nose when he stands up there and says, well, I couldn't do anything for 5 years because the feds wouldn't let me. That's not true. The police departments moved forward before. So if he had his decision made, the wrong decision, then he should have had the backbone to make it. But now when he's running on the national stage, he wants to say, well, that's somebody else's fault. No, it's not. It's your fault. You're the leader of the city. He's lying once again, just like he's lying, say, this was a fair and just process. It most certainly was not. Yes, ma'am.
Pat, you mentioned that the judge advocate did not understand the law in rendering this recommended decision, this draft decision.
That's right.
What exactly did she not understand?
She did not understand the recklessness aspect of the job, saying that a police officer being called by the public, stopping someone that's resisting arrest, who then is resisting arrest, and you're going in through a plate glass window to say that's reckless in that 7 seconds is absolutely wrong. It's a misunderstanding of the law. She should reevaluate that part. If she reevaluates that part, she has to acquit this police officer. I don't think she'll have the backbone to do it, unfortunately. Yes, sir.
You indicated that of the 2 counts, the strangulation was not found, but that the recklessness aspect on the, I guess it was the first count, was found. Stuart or Pat,
Yep.
if this goes adversely to Officer Pantaleo in the final analysis, what are his legal options if he is terminated?
That's a law question.
Sure. Well, we can bring in Article 78, which is where you bring a petition and a notice of petition and then a brief, and it's heard before the appellate division, and we make our arguments that she was wrong on the law, that she was wrong on the facts, that the credibility of the witnesses were in our favor, and then we go from there. So we get a decision from the appellate division based on an Article 78, and then we go from there depending on what that decision is.
Has that ever happened before? Has a police officer ever successfully got his or her job back after a death?
Sure. It is not an option that is generally successful all the time, but this is not a regular, normal case. This is an unusual case. This is a case where she should have known the law better. As Pat said, her understanding of the objective, subjective test of a police officer in Officer Pantaleo's position, she completely misunderstood. And you never second guess what officers do, especially when you're second guessing anywhere from 3 to 5 seconds of what he did. Can you imagine if we were all second guessed on what we did for 3 to 5 seconds in a situation where a man twice your size, you're attempting to take down and he's resisting arrest and telling you it's going to end today? Ridiculous.
I want to put some imagery into your head. We all watched videos recently where police officers were subject to water being dumped on their head. And unfortunately, you saw police officers put their head down and slink away. That's how every one of us feel today, because we just found out that no one will stand up for what's right against wrong. City Hall will not really truly stand up for right and wrong. Only politics, only the loudest in the room. That's how the police officers feel today. They want to put their heads down.
Will there be a counter-protest or some kind of workers' slowdown?
Our job here today is to make sure the next step of this process is fair. So we're asking the police commissioner, who carried a shield in his pocket for 30-some years, to recognize what this decision will make, to gather the strength to make a decision where many will say that you're wrong. But when you know it's right, make that decision and take the hits. That's what we need now. So we're going to march towards the next step to hope that someone is listening. Hope that the right-minded people in this city reach out and say, allow Officer Pantaleo to continue on with his career. We need to look at the front page today that said, don't fire Pantaleo, because that's an important message. And it articulated what we've articulated time and time again. We didn't want to go there and enforce loosies. We get it, but we're sent there by our bosses. From the chief of department sent us there to enforce that law. And we did it, and a tragedy occurred. Don't blame the police officer for your bad policy. Change the policy. Make it clear what you want. Don't put your hands on anyone. Don't hide behind the judge advocate. Say it. We want to give the criminal advocates what they want. They want police officers that respond and hug a thug, rather than grab that thug and say, you can't do that because there's good people on this street. We know we have the support of the public. We feel it every day. What we're saying here today is City Hall has to feel that support. That support has to say, allow our police officers to do their jobs. We're not afraid of accountability. We're held accountable every day. Now it's time we say to the politicians in the city council, in the mayor's office, the public has to say, we're holding you accountable. Look what you've done.
Question?
Yes, sir.
How often, if ever, is there a face-to-face between you, the commissioner, and you and City Hall, just to have that in-person communication and understanding?
We do that on a regular basis. We meet with the police commissioner on a regular basis on all sorts of issues, including this one. We've had discussions with the mayor's office. We have discussions this way as well, because we understand he's trying to take the temperature. We'll take the temperature. There's the temperature. You lost your police department. Yes, ma'am.
My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes, ma'am.
is that the judge found that there was a chokehold, but that it was not intentional. And is that a legal avenue for you going forward with the commissioner?
Well, she found that there was a chokehold, but the standard was higher. Since they never charged him within the 18 months, they needed to prove the criminality of the reckless assault by a preponderance of the evidence for each element. So the reality is she did find the chokehold was used, but that was just the beginning of her analysis. She also indicated in the decision that a lot of the contact with the neck was accidental, unintentional. So she focused her decision only on the recklessness when they hit the window, and the window buckled, and they thought they were going to die going through that window and then coming down to the ground. And as we said, when he got to the ground within 3 seconds, he was up with his hand on his head, allowing him to breathe through his nose and his mouth. So we find that his actions were reasonable. That will be the basis of our appeal going forward. But hopefully, as Patty said, Commissioner O'Neill will do something that will make that not necessary.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Thanks for covering this important issue.